Today's webinar is really focusing on building stronger pathways to retail careers. And this is a webinar for prospective applicants. This is an action-packed webinar. We have a lot of information to share with you today. And so we want to make sure that you know that we are recording today's webinar, and we will send this recording out to participants, and we'll also share it on Achieving the Dreams website. If there are questions that you have today or come up after the webinar, Achieving the Dream has set up an email address by which we're taking questions. The picture on your screen are pictures of folks who will be responding to those questions. So Cindy Lenhart, our Vice President for Community College Relations, is leading this initiative. I'm Meredith Hatch. I'm a Senior Associate Director for Workforce and Academic Alignment at Achieving the Dream. Julia Lawton is an Assistant Director of Programs, and she's working specifically with colleges who are new to the Achieving the Dream network. I know that many of you know Julia through your entrance into the Achieving the Dream network. And Destiny Mitchell is running today's webinar, and she is our Programs and Policy Intern. Thank you, Destiny. So a brief overview of this action-packed agenda. Achieving the Dream is going to provide an overview of the grant opportunity. We're going to provide some very specific definitions that are relevant to the initiative and also to the application that your colleges may have just started completing. We're going to talk about some of the activities that are expected in this initiative. Provide information about what the 4 selected institutions will receive as part of this initiative. Share a little bit about key dates and deadlines, and then we want to actually go through the RFP questions and highlight some key points and take your questions as well. That's why we made sure to highlight the ways for you to ask questions throughout this webinar or raise your hand. So a little bit about the overall initiative. The Building Stronger Pathways to Retail Careers initiative is funded by the Walmart Foundation, and there are a few components of this specific initiative. First, Achieving the Dream is completing an environmental scan where we're really going to look at the status of retail programs of study and retail pathways at Achieving the Dream colleges across the network of 200 community colleges. Then, and this is why you're on the webinar, is we're going to select 4 Achieving the Dream community colleges who are specifically going to strengthen a short-term retail credential, so 6 months or less. And a key component of this, and one that we want to highlight on the webinar, is that this credential should be part of a broader retail pathway at your institution. Another key component to this initiative is that Achieving the Dream will work with an external evaluation team to evaluate the initiative. The goals of this initiative, and we really have 3 key goals. One, we would like to help increase the capacity of selected colleges to build and or strengthen retail pathways into middle skill retail careers, as well as building capacity to collect, analyze, and use labor market and student level data. We want to meet retail employer needs, so the needs of retail employers in your communities. And also, we want to capture and share lessons learned from this initiative that would enable us to provide the community college sector with critical information and tools. So now I'm going to pass the microphone to Julia Lawton, our Assistant Director of Programs, and she's going to talk us through a few key definitions that are important to this initiative. I know that you're all on your computers, and so if you do not have a copy of the RFP in front of you right now, you may want to find your copy. You could find that in the emails that Achieving the Dream has been sending about this initiative, or also if you go on achievingthedream.org and then go to the initiatives link, the resources link, and then to initiatives, you'll be able to find the RFP. All right, so on to Julia for some key definitions.
Thank you, Meredith, and welcome and happy tax day to everyone. So there are 3 key definitions I'm going to take you through. All of this information, as Meredith said, is in the RFP, so if you have that, you can read along with me, or you can just follow along on the slides. So the first definition is the middle skill careers definition, which you'll see pretty comprehensively on your screen now. And so generally for this grant, middle skills require more education than a high school degree, but less than a bachelor's degree. But there are also full-time positions that provide employees with wages and benefits that enable them to earn living wage and support their families. And ideally, they also offer pathways to promotions and additional career opportunities. So the second definition is what we mean by retail for this grant. So this is important because it will help you know whether your programs of study will fall into this category and what we are looking for. So on the screen we have 2 separate ways of defining it. The first is by industry, which you'll see on the left. And on the right we have examples of areas of employment within this industry. So things like sales and management, marketing, merchandising, and you see the others on there. Now, it's important to note that these are examples. They are not the whole list. So if you have a program of study that you're interested in strengthening, but doesn't fall into any of these categories, then please ask us on this webinar or send us an email afterwards and we'll help you out. And so the final definition, there are 2 slides on this one, is our definition of pathway, which is pretty much key to the whole initiative going forward. So you'll see on the screen that a pathway is a set of stackable credentials that lead students to middle skill careers in retail and offer students multiple entry and exit points to assist them in moving to the next level in their careers. Students in the pathway receive comprehensive wraparound support. We'll go into that in more detail later. And credentials within the pathway are based on employer-informed competencies and therefore have market value. And so the second aspect of this is how we define a pathway. And so these components and the pathway definition have been informed by the work of the Office for Community College Research and Leadership, which is in Oregon, which is in Chicago, sorry. And so we've really taken the learnings from that and tried to put it into what we're hoping to do with this initiative. And so on the screen you'll see the key components of a strong pathway separated out into 3 key buckets. The first is the pathway structure, the second is the occupational education, and then finally we have the wraparound student services. And so you can find additional information on each of these in the RFP. And so that's on pages 4 and 5 under the section entitled Achieving the Dreams Retail Pathways Initiative Activities section.
Great. Thank you, Julia. So this is Meredith again. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the activities that are important for this Retail Pathways Initiative. And again, I want to draw your focus to really creating or strengthening a short-term, 6-month or less credential that leads to or prepares students for middle skill employment. And your institution could work to refine this short-term credential and efforts throughout the grant period. And just to talk a little bit about the activities that you see on your screen. So first, staff and faculty support. So this might involve, for example, professional development for faculty and staff or release time. Under data, data is a critical component to this initiative, and being able to track a student and data about the student's progress from recruitment into the pathway through entry into the job market and then actually through retention in that job will be important. We know that colleges across the country have varying levels of capacity in this area, so it's certainly an allowable use of funds to build that capacity. Building internal teams. We know that it will be important to build cross-functional internal teams at your institution, so that would be an allowable use of funds. In strengthening employer partnerships, and so whether this is strengthening your advisory board, that would certainly, or focusing on creating additional opportunities for work-based learning for your students, those would be allowable uses of funds. Julia just talked about the importance of wraparound supports for students, and we see this as a really critical piece of this initiative, and particularly important for this 6-month initiative where a student would be entering and then completing the short-term credential within 6 months. We see these as very relevant. Recruiting students into the program, so advertising the program would be an allowable use of funds. Facilitating workflow really kind of captures all of the other tiles on this screen, so in helping you move this effort forward. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a really critical component of this initiative will be evaluation, then capturing and sharing lessons learned. So whether this is within the group of 4 selected institutions or whether it's sharing results more broadly. So it could be including funds for conference presentations, et cetera. Now, a little bit about what successful applicants will receive. So successful applicants will receive $112,000. Will also receive technical assistance from a small group of subject matter experts that we're calling the Retail Pathways Support Team. And so this will include pathways experts, a cross-college data coach who would work with all 4 institutions selected for this initiative, and each college's Achieving the Dream data and leadership coach, along with the team of external evaluators. Achieving the Dream will be there with selected applicants along the way to provide guidance and assistance. Successful applicants will receive networking opportunities, including that at Dream 2016, and then, of course, external evaluation. In terms of some key dates and deadlines, the first crucial date here is May 5th, and that's the proposal submission deadline. And by that deadline, we would expect that colleges would complete the application narrative as well as the budget spreadsheet and email in the completed submissions. Those are, again, May 5th by midnight Pacific. Then we would expect to have a kickoff of the initiative in June, so an announcement to the selected colleges. Over the summer of 2015, we want to make sure that selected institutions have a bit of a planning period, and then implementation would need to begin by fall 2015. Again, refinement could take place throughout the entire 19-month initiative. We'll bring selected institutions together at Dream 2016, which is in February of 2016. And then the demonstration project would end in December 2016 with a final report due in January. So now we're actually going to go into some specifics about the RFP, and I just want to remind you that if you have any questions, you can type them into the questions pane, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute your line. I mentioned that this webinar is content-rich, and so then if we're not able to get to your question during today's webinar, we'll make sure to be able to follow up with you. If you have questions after the webinar, of course, you can always email us. so I'll pause and see if we have any questions right now before we go into a little bit about what Achieving the Dream is looking for in the RFP. Okay. So first, Achieving the Dream overall, and this is a slide about the big picture, what we would look for in a successful application is evidence of a true commitment to this effort, a thoughtful, ambitious, but achievable plan, a plan that incorporates the pathway design components that Julia spoke about earlier, and also data capacity building. And then we're looking for some capacity and dedication to effectively implementing the planned efforts. All right, Julia?
Yes. So I'm going to take you through the first two sections. We're not going to go exactly question by question. We're going to go by section. So the first section, after just a general summary of what you're hoping to do, is called the Existing Retail Career Pathways section, and this is composed of 3 questions. And generally, this section is designed to ascertain the college's current retail pathway offerings. It's to help us understand the specifics of the short-term credential you will be strengthening, and also to help us learn how students are supported along the way to achieve their goals. And so just a bit of specifics about this. For questions A and C, we're asking you to respond with regard to all of your retail career pathways, whereas for question B, we're just specifically looking for a response based on the short-term retail credentials that you're going to be strengthening. So that's the 6-month or less certificate that you're going to be strengthening through this grant specifically, whereas A and C are for any retail pathway that you have at your college. So the second set of questions, the second section, is existing data and data capacity. And again, I think there are 3 questions in this. And so the purpose of this is to provide a summary look at the current enrollment and completion data for your retail program study, to ascertain which data points the college currently collects for this program study, and to identify the local demand for this type of credential. And so again, some specifics on that. For questions A and B, we're really looking for the information on the retail program of study, that the specific short-term retail credential you're going to be strengthening through this grant is located in. So that's the whole pathway that embeds the short-term 6-month certificate.
And I'll just add in a little bit here, Julia. So Julia mentioned this, and I just want to reiterate it. We really are looking to see what data are available. We know that some of your institutions are not collecting this data, and if that's the case, then we want to know that too. That would not disqualify an applicant. Thanks, Julia. Okay, great. So then, this is Meredith again. Then we go into some questions specifically about retail employer engagement. And here we're really looking to understand the current mechanisms or ways that your institution is connecting with local and regional retail employers. So is it advisory boards? Are there different mechanisms? Are there some ways that you would hope to strengthen this as well? And then also, if you're currently engaging retail employers, how are you incorporating their feedback or input into the design of your retail programs of study and the retail pathway? So those are the questions about retail employer engagement. Then we have a specific question, and this is a really important part of the RFP. This is the project description. And so here we have a list of pathway components, and we ask for you to identify which ones your institution will be focusing on creating or strengthening through this initiative. And we would hope that it would be a large number of the pathway components. The other piece is that we ask for a very specific outline of your college's plan to strengthen the short-term retail credential. And this plan should include a timeline. We know that plans are really roadmaps, so we would expect that you might adjust this plan if selected for implementation. But we do want to see a very clear plan that shows the timeline for when key activities would be taking place over the 19-month project period. The next set of questions that Achieving the Dream is asking for applicants to respond to are about who would be on your college's team. So who are the key players that would need to be involved in the planning and implementation of this work? And then we ask about, and we'd like for you to be honest here, any challenges that you might anticipate or capacities that you would specifically like to build through this effort. We also ask if you have suggestions about ways that Achieving the Dream could support your college throughout this initiative. So those are the questions about the college team and technical assistance. We know it's difficult to identify technical assistance needs, particularly before an initiative begins. But we also, another way to think about it is where you might run into challenges and identifying those.
Yeah. So in addition to your RFP narrative, which we've just gone through each component of, we're asking that you submit a completed budget for the funds that are attached to this opportunity. So on your screen now, you can see on the left is the $112,000 that will go to each selected college. And they will be coming in 2 installments. The first is a larger one because we're really hoping that you can spend a lot of the money up front on the planning and the implementation and getting things started. And as you move into the second year, you're really trying to refine and improve and support this going forward. And so on the left, again, you'll see what the funds can be used for. We've talked a little bit about this earlier on, but it's personnel, faculty, and staff release time, consultants, materials and supplies that you can be using for marketing and that kind of thing. The travel, which will include conferences, especially the Achieving the Dream conference in 2016, and professional development activities for your staff that will be involved in this. So that's what the $112,000 is for. On the right are additional services that are being provided by Achieving the Dream at no additional cost. So you don't have to use any of your $112,000 to cover the stuff on the right. And that is all of the technical assistance provided by the Achieving the Dream staff and the Pathways support team. That's completely covered by Achieving the Dream. And in addition to that, we are going to be providing 1 additional visit from your coaching teams. That's both your data coach and your leadership coach. For the whole grant period, you will get 1 additional visit from them. And that's really to help you tie in the work that you're doing in this grant to the rest of the work you're doing within your Achieving the Dream work.
Great. Thank you, Julia. I just want to remind folks that the budget template is a spreadsheet, and so there are specific places to enter numbers as well as some narrative description so that you can provide that budget narrative as well. So that ends our formal presentation about the RFP and about this initiative. And we'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have. Again, we ask that you either type your questions into the questions pane, or you can raise your hand and we will unmute your line. Okay, so we have 1 question. This is specifically about the budget. The Achieving the Dream Conference should be included in the $112,000 or the travel portion of the budget. So we do have a specific travel line on the budget, and so travel to that conference should be included in that line. Thank you, Jody. All right, and Candace. So we see you've raised your hand, and we're going to unmute your line. Candace, can we hear you? We have unmuted your line. Candace, we can't hear you. Would you mind typing your question into the questions pane? Okay. Well, we're going to either hear Candace or she might type something into the pane. Oh, we do see it. Okay. Thank you. You're going to type something into the pane. I apologize for that inconvenience. So then the next question we have from Sylvia. And so Sylvia says, there was some information on the site about the first stage of this initiative that related to a research project on retail pathways. Will ATD be disseminating that information before the due date? And Sylvia, based on the really aggressive timeline for this effort, Achieving the Dream will not be releasing the results of the national research that we're calling the environmental scans before the due date by May 5th. Good question.
It will, however, be shared as soon as we have it with the colleges that will be doing this work, as well as the wider Achieving the Dream network. So you will be getting it, just not before the RFP is due.
Thank you, Sylvia. Okay. So then the next question is, let's see. Will completers of the credentials be measured by employment in the field, or can they continue through the higher pathway credential? So that's an excellent question, Kelly. So we would expect movement either into the selected field or into further education in the retail pathway. Okay, the next question that we have is, how many individuals do you expect to travel to DREAM? I'm sorry, I'm just reading the rest of that question. Oh, how many from the college team? So here, Jody, I think we need to know a little bit more about your college team, and that would inform the number of individuals that you would send to the specific convening. We would anticipate, though, no fewer than 3. But if there is a larger team that's going to be working very closely on this effort, then it may make sense to include them. Okay, I'm looking for an additional question. Lucy asked, will you have a copy of the PowerPoint available for reference? And the answer is yes. So following this PowerPoint presentation and webinar today, we're going to send out a recording of the webinar, and we'll also send out a copy of the PowerPoint for your reference, because we know that May 5th is a little ways away, and so you'll probably be writing parts of this application later than today. Okay, I'm seeing if we have more questions right now. Okay. Candace asks, since some, not all, retail positions start below a livable wage for entry-level employment, will there be an employment outcome? And if so, will there be a starting salary target as well? So this is something that we have really thought about a lot, and we've also talked a lot about with the Walmart Foundation and retail employers, because we know that many retail employees start in entry level and then have the potential if their skills match, to move into middle skill. So we would be capturing wages whether they were entry-level or middle skill. There are a number of grantees in the Retail Jobs Initiative, which is funded by the Walmart Foundation, and some are actually sharing some wage information that they are defining as middle skill. So that's information that we're happy to keep the conversation going about and share with you as it continues to emerge. Next question. Can students that are already in a retail certificate program be included in the data, or are we just looking to track new students entering the program? And Jody, here's where it'll be really helpful for us to see the map of your retail career pathway. We're really looking for a short-term credential, no longer than 6 months, by which students can gain middle skill level of knowledge and skills. So that's the way that I would answer that question right now. Do other folks have some additional information that might help answer that question? I want to make sure that we're being clear. So the question is, can students that are already in a retail certificate program be included in the data, or are we just to track the new students entering the program?
This is Cindy Linhart, and you have a really good question there, and I guess the answer to that would depend upon whether or not the student that you currently have enrolled has taken the coursework that you have defined for this short-term credential. So if the student still has coursework that they would need to take in that short-term credential, then I think that we could include those in that. But since it's such a short-term sort of burst credential, we would want students in it that were taking most of those courses.
Great, thank you, Cindy. And Jody, do let us know if that has not answered your question. Okay, I'm looking for some additional questions. Keep them coming. All right. So the question is, will there be any funding available for tuition expenses directly from Achieving the Dream? And so this would not be included in any additional funding. The $112,000 would support, would be the support that is available for Achieving the Dream for any selected institution. If your college selects to include tuition expenses within that budget, then we would want that clearly indicated, and we would want to understand the rationale for doing so. Great. Thank you. I want to highlight too, and this is relevant to some of the questions that have been asked, and if you have questions about it, let us know. We do see that work-based learning is really a key component, particularly given the short-term timeline of this credential and wanting to get students ready for middle-skill jobs in retail. We know that part of the currency in the retail field is time on the job, and so having a work-based learning component would be crucial in this effort. Okay. So there's another question about have Achieving the Dream and our funder, the Walmart Foundation, defined goals for students served, credentials awarded, et cetera. And so here, we're really looking for ambitious numbers. We want to make sure that if you're proposing an initiative at your institution, that you would include a large number of students. But we know also that that depends a lot on your local context about employer demands, about the students who come to your institutions and that you could recruit into this program. You may also wish to focus on incumbent workers for this effort, and so that might provide some helpful context in the response to this question.
And this is Cindy Linhart again, and I would add to what Meredith said in really saying we want colleges to really promote and market and recruit students into these retail pathways. So part of this effort is really about making retail pathways an option that students really seek. And so it's important that we think about how we do that in the context of this.
And I would just add, we're not, while we're looking for ambitious numbers, we don't want to rule out any smaller rural colleges. We're looking for different types of colleges that have ambitious numbers for themselves. We're not going to make the decision based solely on the numbers that you're giving us.
Thank you. There is another question about, I think we've addressed the target number of students served, so ambitious based on your local context. Credentials attained, we're really looking for the large majority of students who start in this retail credential that's no more than 6 months to complete it. That is a very important goal of this effort, to make sure that students are completing what they start. We have a pause in questions, and that's okay. While we're waiting for a few more questions to come in, I do want to emphasize another component. So I talked a little bit about work-based learning. Another point that I'd like to raise is that it is our expectation that courses are offered for credit or that can stack into credit for this initiative. And we see that as very important in really creating a pathway in which students can go into additional education and training, whether immediately or later on in their career pathway. So Sam asks, is there a recognized industry certificate now? And what we do know is that there are a couple initiatives across the country focusing on some industry recognized credentials. And one has been very much informed by the Retail Federation. And we know that Tyler Junior College is leading a TACT grant that is working with a number of institutions around the country on this employer-informed certificate. I mentioned earlier that Achieving the Dream is part of a cadre of different grantees in the Retail Jobs Initiative funded by the Walmart Foundation. And so some of our fellow grantees, for example, the ACT Foundation, is working with employers to define competencies that are necessary for middle-skill retail employees. And that's some of the information that we will be sharing with the Achieving the Dream Network and working with the selected colleges for this initiative to make sure that we're sharing that information. So Mary Beth, will we be sharing the questions and answers you have just provided along with the PowerPoint? So we are recording the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to have access to the specific questions and the responses that Achieving the Dream has provided. We'll be emailing that information out to you. Also, I want to remind participants in this webinar that if a question comes up that we did not address on this webinar, or if you're just wondering about something that we did say on this webinar, you can ask it now, or you can always follow up with us on the Retail Pathways email account that's listed in the RFP, and we'll be able to provide a response or expand on a response as well. Okay. I'm reading through a few more questions. So the question is, we have a concern of adding a retail class into our program, but we can't make curriculum changes until fall of 2016. So we may have to move within our current offerings. Is a curriculum change an expectation? And so I think to respond to that question,
I'll take a stab at that one. This is Cindy again. There is a realization that oftentimes curriculum change may take a while. And I think as long as you make that clear in your submission, that a curriculum change may happen, but at a later time, we're not going to write in and say curriculum changes have to be done by fall in order to make this happen, because we realize that that expectation is not realistic. So if there's a way that, if you can't make the curriculum change, I think as long as you are clear about that in your RFP and what you're doing about it in the short term, I think that that would be appropriate.
And again, the place that you could capture that that timeline would be in the project description in your application. Okay. Not seeing any more hands, let's see. I think we've responded to the questions that have been asked via the questions pane. We're going to give a couple more minutes for folks to think of any additional questions, and then we will close the webinar. So I'll keep on talking just a little bit to make sure that that you know that we're still here. Give you a little bit of time to think of any questions that you may wish to ask. Okay. I'm going to give one more minute. Again, I want to make sure that folks have enough time to ask what they might wish to. Yes, I know someone mentioned that more questions will come after we get off today's call. Yes, that is our experience in everyday life. I know as soon as I hang up the phone, I think, oh, I should have asked this. So again, we're happy to provide a little bit more information, clarify any of the responses we have shared on today's phone call, or other things that might come up as you're working with teams in your college to actually write a response to the request for proposals.
And while we're waiting for additional questions, the email address that you can email your questions to is in the RFP, but for those on the webinar, it's actually retailpathways, one word, at achievingthedream.org. That's retailpathways@achievingthedream.org. You can email us, and one of the four of us that you saw at the beginning on the pictures will respond to you.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you all so much for your active participation in today's webinar. We hope that we've provided some information that will help you as you are considering or writing an application in response to our request for proposals. Again, those proposals are due into Achieving the Dream by midnight Pacific on May the 5th. And we look forward to seeing your responses, and we also are very happy to talk with you or teams from your institution as you work to develop proposals. So thanks again, and we'll be following up with the PowerPoint and the recording for this webinar. Have a great day. Bye.